Hello, everyone. My name is John Thompson, and I am Vice President of Player Development and Engagement for Monumental Sports. And I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for this roundtable discussion today. As we head into Martin Luther King weekend, where culminating on Monday, our country acknowledges and celebrates Dr. King and recognizes Dr. King. We wanted to get together with some of our athletes, not only to talk about Dr. King and what he has meant to everyone, but also how they see themselves and their role as it relates to social activism and community activation. We're very fortunate that today's discussion will be moderated and hosted by Jesse Washington. Jesse is a senior writer for ESPN's The Undefeated. He also co-authored I Came as a Shadow, the autobiography of my dad, John Thompson. He's produced several films, one, March on Washington, Keepers of a Dream, and he directed a short documentary, Bearing Witness, a portrait of Darnella Frazier. And for those of you who don't know, Darnella Frazier is the young woman who, with her cell phone, videotaped the murder of George Floyd. And so Jesse did a documentary about her. Prior to working for The Undefeated, he covered race in America for the Associated Press. He's been the editor of 3 different magazines. And on any given weekend at a gym near you, you will see him ball in the 35 and over league. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jesse, who will lead our discussion today.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. That was very kind. 50 and over league these days, but who's counting? I want to welcome everybody to this Martin Luther King Day event, and we hope to educate, encourage, and inspire all of you to think of how you can help to serve others. Some quick history about the King Day to get us started. The Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday was first proposed in 1968, 4 days after King was assassinated, and it was proposed in Congress by the late John Conyers. The bill did not pass that year. It did not pass the next year, or the next, or the next, or the next. It took 15 years for the Martin Luther King holiday to become federal law. And it took another 10 years after that for all of the states in America to recognize it and give people a paid day off. As a matter of fact, the NFL moved the Super Bowl out of Arizona because that state was the last holdout in refusing to honor Dr. King's legacy. So that brings us into the 90s. Now today, everyone gets the day off from school and from work, but obviously the mission and the principles that Dr. King sacrificed his life for, that work continues today. And our panelists today, they are all about that work. So I'm going to start by introducing Natasha Cloud. She is a powerful voice for equal rights for all in America. Natasha's from suburban Philadelphia, played college ball at Maryland and St. Joseph's, and led the Mystics to a 2019 WNBA championship. She's been on the front lines of activism and protest nationwide and is recognized as a national leader among athletes seeking social justice. Natasha, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Jesse.
Absolutely. Next, we have Alysha Clark. Alysha is a Tennessee native. She went to college at East Tennessee State, and she's a 10-year WNBA veteran and a dedicated community servant. Since arriving in Washington, Alysha has performed volunteer service in the community and promoted grassroots organizations. And that engagement and uplifting of grassroots organizations who are in the trenches every day is one of the most effective ways that we can all create change in this country. Alysha is passionate about uplifting Black people, uplifting women, and encouraging healthy eating habits. Alysha, welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi, Jesse. I'm well. Thank you for having me. And a small correction, Middle Tennessee State. It's a big deal. East and Middle, Middle Tennessee State.
Thank you. My apologies, and thank you for that correction. Man.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Ooh, recognized. Okay. Next up, I'd like to introduce Daniel Gafford. He's a big man for the Washington Wizards. This is his 4th season in the NBA. He's from Arkansas, played for the Razorbacks, the flagship state university. He's passionate about giving back to the community and recently hosted his first annual Jingle Ball. At this event, he served 200 middle school families with meals, clothing, personal care items, and toys. Big Dan, it's good with you.
What's up? How y'all doing? Thanks for having me. And yeah, this is my third year. Everybody gets it mixed up because I got traded in the middle of my second. So this is my third year, going on 3. You know, everybody trying to put me in the vet.
Goodness.
They're trying to put me in the vet scene. No, it's okay. Everybody does it. They're trying to put me in the vet scene early in my career.
Man, I'm 5 minutes in and got 2 strikes, man. I gotta get okay. Don't take me out, coach.
No, it's all good. I appreciate you guys for having me. Can't wait for it.
Okay, cool. And finally, we have my friend Etan Thomas. Etan is a retired NBA veteran who is now an author, advocate, poet, podcaster, lecturer, activist, and he might come over and fix your refrigerator too if you're not careful. Etan's latest book, not his book, but his latest book is Police Brutality and White Supremacy, The Fight Against American Traditions. That is a strong title right there. Etan is a recipient of the Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation Legacy Award for his social justice advocacy. Etan, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion.
Absolutely. No, this is going to be great. Okay, so I'd like to start out with Natasha and ask you this. Right now, athlete activism is trending. It seems like everybody is posting and hashtagging and things like that. Now, your commitment is on a different level. You sat out the entire 2020 WNBA season in part to focus on social justice. So my question is, how would you encourage young people to make their social activism meaningful and not just something done for clout or to build their brand?
It has to be an everyday approach. Every day when you wake up, you want to be the best version of yourself. You want to be, I love that AC wore her always be kind shirt. You want to always be kind. I think the thing that gets kind of lost in translation is you don't have to be an athlete, a professional athlete, or a celebrity to have impact within your community. It can start in your home. It can start at your school. It can start with your friends group. So any little thing is a big thing when we're talking about progressing us forward. So something that I'm always telling the younger generation is, the generation before us failed us. Our generation is trying to pick up the pieces, but it's going to be the next generation that really just completely pushes this thing forward. And I wish that I knew when I was younger the power that my voice had before I ever got to college or anything, just regardless, in whether it was in class, again, at home, in my community. Understand the power that your voices have, understand the power of your community, understand the power of numbers, and your ability to push this thing forward.
Wow, thank you. Daniel, everybody in sports, and we got a lot of athletes here who are joining us today, and everybody in sports talks about the grind, now how you have to be super focused, and you can only think about basketball 27 hours a day to reach the next level or whatever your sport is. But you spend a lot of time on community service, and it's something that's a part of your life. What role does service play in your life? Why is it important to you? And how do you balance that with your professional basketball obligations?
I would say the role that it plays with me, it's a real big role, because time and time again, like when I was younger, in any given circumstance, I was always one of the kids that always went to the community give backs. I was always one of the kids that needed the backpacks, needed the school supplies, needed food in the house, the little things. So just being in the position that I'm in now, I always wanted to reiterate that and try to give back to the community the same way people gave back to me. It's just a big thing, because I've always wanted to make someone's life better in any given circumstance. I've always wanted to bring smiles to people's faces, brighten their lives, give them like a reason to live, because I mean, no matter what you say or anything, there's always struggle in certain communities. And just being the type of guy that I am, and just being in the position that I am, I want to use my platform to be able to give back and just give people hope, let people know that it's not just somebody in their community that cares about them. It's somebody that's, that's in a profession that brings entertainment throughout the world, that comes back and gives back to the community and shows that there's some type of person out there that actually cares. Whether it's, a basketball player, football player, any, given profession, somebody's always going to step in and try to show you that, we care. It's bigger than basketball. It's bigger than any other sport. And I always try to make time out for it because people have made time out for me. So with just being in this profession and stuff, I can always push it to the side. Basketball, can be a forever thing for me. It brings out all kind of stuff for me. But at the end of the day, it's all about the community and it's all about the kids. And it's all about the families too, just bringing everybody together one step at a time with high energy, a lot of smiles, and just doing everything that we love, where it comes to music, being around each other, laughing, entertainment, little things like that. Something to just bring the community together and just be together as one, as a unit.
What about that part about staying in the gym? And if you're not in the gym, your competition is in there outworking you. Why spend time on community service rather than on focusing on your sport?
Because at the end of the day, you can do community service one half of the day and get in the gym the next half of the day. So, it's always, it's 24 hours in a day. It's always time you can put in. You're not going to be in the gym all day. I would say, you can spend 4 hours a day in the gym. You can spend the next 20 in your community. So little things like that, you can still, I would say, save time for your profession. But for me, all in all, I always want to be in the community, whether, they want me in the gym or anything like that. I'm always give back. That's my main thing, because if it was me in a position that a lot of people are in this world, I would always, want to be in some type of position to where somebody, actually cared and showed and came and just, tried to make the community better, for instance, day in, day out, and instead of just, letting the community just rot and certain things like that, because people have came time and time again. Like when I was younger and stuff, people used to always just come and just give back. And that always used to brighten my day. They always used to make me feel that there's something out there more than just what I'm living in, for sure. So just seeing that, it opened my eyes a lot. And just being in the position that I'm in, I always want to try to copycat that, for sure.
Thank you for that. Something out there more than just what I'm living in. That's a powerful thought. Alysha, in MLK's day, the civil rights movement and all the people we learn about most of the time from that period of history, it's dominated by men. Why do you find it important to use your platform to empower women?
Because I think right now, the more we're learning, the more documentaries are coming out, the more historical information is coming out, we're seeing that women were behind the scenes of these dominating men that were leading the charge on all fronts. And so, we're in a time now where, everybody's talking about female empowerment, everybody's talking about, betting on women. But you see that time and time again, it's women who have shown up continuously to get things done. And just speaking specifically for us as the WNBA, we've constantly been, at the front, using our voices, using our platform for change, not being afraid of what comes along with that, because at the end of the day, we know what we're fighting for is bigger than losing a couple sponsorships here or there. And so it's important because, we want to have the equality of the voices speaking. It's not just men being affected by these injustices that are going on in our world, in our country. It's also women. And we face a different, we kind of face twofold of being a woman in society and then being women of color in society. So I think it's important to just encourage women to know that your voice matters, your voice is important, your voice has been there since the beginning of this fight and in this movement, and to continue to encourage using it to help make change.
Absolutely, thank you. And for all you students out there, if they're not teaching you these names in your class, go to your teacher and demand, hey, I want to know about Ella Baker. I want to know about Diane Nash. I want to know about Fannie Lou Hamer. These are giants of the civil rights movement, and we must understand and honor their legacy. So, Etan, I love your book, your latest book cover with the Black Panther power type of situation. And you're a student of history, and Black athletes have a long history of involvement in activism. So my question for you is, what responsibility do today's athletes have at all levels, not just professionals, but what responsibility do athletes in particular have for carrying forth the legacy of Martin Luther King?
Well, I think you have an opportunity to speak for people who might not have the platform that you have. I remember when I was in high school, I had a situation where I was kind of roughed up by the police on my way to a game, and I was really upset about it. It was unfair. I got profiled. They thought I looked like somebody that was in a mugshot. It turned out I looked familiar to them because I played basketball and I was in the papers. So I actually wrote a speech about it. I was in speech and debate when I was in high school. So we were winning state championships in basketball, but we was also winning state championships in speech and debate. So that was just kind of my thing. So I wrote a speech about it. I wrote an original oratory, which is when you write the speech yourself. Standard oratory is when you recite somebody else's speech. So I wrote an original oratory talking about what happened to me. And I started performing it all around where I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I started getting a lot of recognition about it. The newspapers wrote about it. I was winning tournaments and everything like that, and it kept going. And so that's when a lot of people in the community started coming up to me, and they were like, thank you for saying that. That happens all the time, but nobody hears us when we say it. And so that's when it's like the light bulb went off. I was like, oh, so they just really are listening to me because I play basketball, and that's when I made that connection. I was like, oh, okay, well now I could do like, all the athlete activists that I grew up reading about, like Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell and John Carlos and Tommy Smith and all the athletes that use their positions as platforms. And then I just continued doing that for the rest of my career, but it all started in high school.
Wow. Alysha, do you feel a responsibility? What is it that motivates you to pursue the service that you do?
I wouldn't necessarily say a responsibility as much as I would say a privilege to be able to be in this position to have a voice and a platform to influence change. And for me, kind of what DG was talking about, just about how you want to make others feel seen and feel important and feel that they know that they're loved and feel like they matter. That's always been something for me that I wanted to do whenever I encounter anyone. And I think part of it honestly just comes from, we moved a lot growing up, and I was always the outcast. I was always the new kid. I was always having to find my way. And I remember feeling, left out and not feeling like I belonged anywhere. And so when I started volunteering and giving back to others, I was like, okay, this is what I want to help people feel like they matter and help people feel seen. And being able to play basketball at this level just gives that platform to be able to do so. And something I always say is, if I can make one person's day better, one person's smile that day, then that's one more person in this world that's having, gonna go on and have a better day. And so that's just, it's easy for me. It's second nature just to serve others. That's what we're here to do.
Daniel, I think you spoke pretty strongly about, you were benefiting from these type of things and you're passing it on, which is a wonderful thing. And we all have an opportunity to pass something on. Natasha, where did your drive come from? Where did that I don't want to call it a spark, it's more like a volcano, but where did that come from for you?
I feel like I resonate a lot with Alysha just said. Even though, I didn't move, I always felt with being a mixed kid, I was like a gray area kid. I was never Black enough. I was never white enough. So I just called myself this gray area kid. And, it's similar to that. You go through life. The older that you get, the more of a threat that you're seeing in America, the more that you go through. And being able to play this game of basketball and being able to impact lives and change lives and use this God-given platform to be a voice for the voiceless and amplify, issues that are plaguing the communities that mean most to me. I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to a lot of people that look like me, to a lot of people that identify with the same things that I identify as, if I didn't use this platform to be that voice and to amplify voices. So, I give a lot of credit to my parents and how they raised us to be vocal, to stand up when things aren't right, to be a voice and to support people, but to also give back. You know, they always told us, I can remember my grandfather always saying, it doesn't matter if it's a CEO or the janitor, you treat them the same way, you treat them with the same respect, you treat them with the same love and grace. And then that just makes our community better, which then makes our world better. And it sounds like crazy when you say it, but it's like, it really does matter how you treat people every day, how you go to bat for someone that is being or seeing injustices. I think that's kind of where the spark came from. And then also just being in DC and understanding, I've been in DC for 8 years. I've been blessed to be here with Monumental and the Mystics, and a great organization that not only sees us, but helps amplify our voices. And being in the most powerful city in the entire world, you really understand the impact that you can have. And I think that's something that not only us as the Mystics, but the Wizards also take. We understand that responsibility of the market that we're in.
Thank you. Daniel, how do you know you're making a difference when you're doing these things? You know, do you ever question yourself, like, man, is this the right move for me? You know, should I be doing something else? Am I really helping? How do you deal with those questions?
They all are basically answered whenever I'm at the event, any type of event that is with giving back, or just pretty much just having people there in general to where you can make an impact. I would say, you know, the event that I just had, there was a group of kids that had came up. I had my barber out there. They had just came from him, and they got a cut from him, and they came straight to me, and they were asking how tall I were. They were asking who I was and certain things like that. I told them who I was, and they started remembering who I were. Well, who I was. I can't even talk, Jesus. But they started to, like, you know, put two and two together and stuff, and like the energy was just through the roof when they figured out who I was. And one of the kids had showed me my highlights and stuff. It was real good. So basically what I'm saying is just like in instances like that, just seeing how, you know, the energy can change when someone, you know, figures out who you are and the things that you do, and the fact that you're in the community with them and being around them and certain things like that. And just seeing the energy change and seeing how happy you make them just by being around them, it just shows that, like, that question is always answered, that for sure, like, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing it for the kids. I'm doing it to make them happy. This is not for me at all. You know, I can just always sit back and just, you know, think that, yeah, I'm doing something good for somebody, you know, not just sitting up and just, you know, being behind the scenes and just watching the event from afar, just being out there, being in the community and, you know, seeing the kids. Like I said, they came from my barber, told them the haircuts and stuff looked nice and everything. They was up there, you know, feeling themselves. They was rubbing their faces and stuff. So it was all good, man. Just seeing the smiles and stuff, that's how that question is answered for me. You know, just making families happy, making the kids happy. You know, even, you know, you can be a child, you can be, you know, elderly, it doesn't really matter. You know, happiness doesn't comes with age at all, to be honest with me. And so just seeing like all the smiles throughout the community, whether it's a kid or whether you're elderly or whether, you know, you're out there with your kids, it's amazing to me, because I'm making an impact on so many people's lives. And like, for instance, just being out there and, like, you know, just seeing it. Like I said, that answers the question all the time. I ask myself all the time, like when I got done with the event, I kind of asked myself, I was like, because we had a lot of people that had to back out because of COVID. So I kind of asked myself, was it enough? Did we do all the things that we needed to do or anything like that? And I looked on social media and stuff, and everybody was just like, it was great. We enjoyed it. The food was amazing. All the toys and stuff were basically all the things the kids wanted. We gave a couple of families bikes and stuff, and just seeing all that stuff, that answers the question a lot. You know, you always have a doubt in the back of your mind. I know that for a fact, because we have it every day. You know, there's always doubt. So just seeing that and seeing the comments and stuff and how much people enjoyed it and everything, that answers the question time and time again, for sure.
Thank you. And thank you for, you know, someone in your position has doubt. And so it's normal for us all to have doubt. And you can't go wrong with a fresh cut or I remember that feeling once upon a time. So Etan with the flowing dreadlocks, you know, what's a moment that you had where, you know, you're so forceful and confident and front and center with, you know, with the boldness of your positions and your insistence on justice, But what's a time where you got some blowback or something negative came your way as a result of that that you had to navigate or deal with? The negative response that inevitably will be met with any type of insistence on equality and justice.
Oh, well, it's pretty much every time. You're going to have somebody who strongly disagrees with you. And I've had that from, even I'll use the example when I was in high school. There was many people who around Tulsa who strongly disagreed with what I was saying. It's interesting. We're talking about in the spirit of Dr. King. Now people like to paint him as this picture that everybody loved him and everybody agreed with him and everybody supported him. But if you look a little bit deeper, that's not how it was. You have to go beyond what they show you. So that's one of the things that I used to always question was like, okay, why he has all these speeches, all these different things that he does. Why they only show us I Have a Dream? Like he's done so much. Why just the one speech? And not even the whole speech, just like a few key parts from the speeches. And so, I remember really looking at his letter from a Birmingham jail. And he was talking directly to different clergy and different, politicians and people at that time who were telling him pretty much they were criticizing the work that he was doing. They were saying, now is not the time, be patient, just wait. In his letter, and if y'all haven't read that, you got to go read that because it's really, to answer your question, if they criticize Dr. King, they'll criticize everybody. When you stand up for something, you're going to get the criticism. But Dr. King responded to them respectfully, but it was a response where he stood firm in what he believed in, and he continued on pushing, even though people weren't supporting him. And I just love that about this generation. I was just watching before we got on here, these different schools. One was in Boston, I think one was Brooklyn Tech, and they had formed this big walkout. And, I like stuff like that. Like they all got together, there was something that had an issue with, and they all got together and they all talked and they stood in one accord because there's so much strength in numbers. So a lot of times, younger people, middle school, high school, will say, okay, what can we do? We're only, teenagers. What can we possibly do? But when you do something together and you band as one, you can do so much. And I think it's just powerful. So I love that about y'all generation, the way that y'all use social media. We didn't have social media like that when I was growing up. That's y'all generation. The way that y'all can communicate and band together and everything like that, I think is wonderful. So I would just encourage you to keep doing that. And that is in the spirit of Dr. King.
Absolutely. So one thing that I really appreciate about this panel is that you all have different styles of activism, different avenues that you go down. And no one is superior to the other. A wise man once said that many roads lead to Rome, and y'all are all taking us down that road to Rome, to equality, to justice. Alysha, I wanted to ask you about how you found the type of activism that's comfortable for you. You're not someone who's necessarily in your face or with the rah-rah, but you're very effective. And how did you find your particular voice and what felt right for the person that you are?
Well, I honestly, it wasn't until our 2020 WNBA season where I would say that I considered myself an activist. Because for so long, I just felt like I was kind of in the background and was too quiet and not really out there enough to be considered one. So that season really taught me a lot in all the conversations that we had on Zoom calls with, some amazing people, everyone from, Stacey Abrams to our forever First Lady, Michelle Obama, just to be able to hear the way that they make impact in kind of in behind the scenes way. And that's kind of how I am anyway as a person. I'm more I'm reserved, I'm behind the scenes. I'd rather, do something quietly. And so that season really taught me that there's a lot of avenues to activism. There's not one right way. There's not one best way. It's whatever feels comfortable and natural to you, because when you find that avenue, that's where you're able to, I think, make the most change, because it's truthful to who you are, and people will gravitate towards you as a person in that way. So if what you're doing and fighting for, how you're going about it, matches up with who you are personally, I think it gives a stronger force in that way. And so that's how I found my voice. That's how I found my way. And I'm a big believer in education. So, you know, when I do come to the table, I think one of the reasons I am able to be so effective is because I come with education, I come with facts and knowledge, because a lot of times through this, people argue, you can argue and dissect feelings, right? You can be like, oh, well, you're being too emotional, or, oh, you're just being too sensitive. But it's like, no, if I come to you and I'm like, well, actually, according to, you know, this, here are the statistics of what's happening, you can't argue that, you know? So I think that's where I find my strength when it comes to activism. That's where I find my comfort when it comes to activism. And, you know, I would just encourage, you know, all you guys watching, that find what fits you, find what fits your personality, find what makes you comfortable. And then be confident and strong in that avenue, and go make some change.
That's terrific. So I want to take a pause here and bring Coach Thompson back out. He has an announcement about some action type items. Coach Thompson.
Yeah, this has really been actually inspiring for me. You know, decades ago, Dr. King would put out a call to action and a community would mobilize. And here at Monumental, we want to put out a challenge, a call to action. Natasha spoke about earlier that you don't have to be a celebrity to make a difference. And Etan spoke about how, you know, as a young high school student, he found his voice and found out he could make a change. Alysha just finished talking about how, you know, everyone has their own personality and they can affect change in different ways. And so we want to put out a challenge here, and I'm challenging all the teams, all the people that are listening as spectators in this roundtable, to come up with an action plan on how you can affect change. You can initiate change in your school, in your community. And you see the graphic on the board where we want you to email those action plans by Monday morning. So, you know, we talk about all the sacrifice that Dr. King made. As Etan articulated, it's not always easy, it's not always convenient. And we intentionally made this, you know, here it is Friday afternoon, and we need these plans by Monday morning. So you have to work over the weekend, you have to sacrifice some. But if you come up with an action plan on how you can make a difference, or how your team can make a difference in your school, in your community, and if you submit it to the email that's on this graphic here, by Monday morning, 10 a.m., we'll get you guys tickets to each action plan, 2 tickets to our game, to the Wizards game this Monday against the Sixers. We're going to leave this graphic in the chat, and it also will be sent out via email to everyone who registered for this call. So much like Dr. King, we're putting out a call to action. Hopefully you guys can put some thought into it on how you, in your world, and many of you guys, the athletes that are listening, you are leaders in your own sphere, your own community, how you can make a change. All right, so good luck with that. We look forward to having some thoughtful, insightful action plans submitted, and then we will follow up with you sometime Monday. Back to you, Jesse.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. And I always feel like if an action helps one person, it made a difference. Just one person, you know, it made a difference. So I encourage everybody to take advantage of this opportunity, you know, that we have to make a difference, even if it's just for one person. So Etan, I wanted to ask you something. You know, America has always struggled with being honest about its history. And right now there's this huge battle going on across the country about how to teach history to children. There are forces out there, people, organizations, elected officials who are trying to erase or limit actual, factual, historical things from the curriculum. You know, and it's disturbing and it's dangerous. And a lot of that is that, as you mentioned earlier, everyone wants to say, oh yeah, Martin Luther King, judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And they'll twist and use that. But there's a lot about Dr. King and history in general that they don't want us to know. So my question for you is, what do you think is something about MLK that has been overlooked or distorted? What should young people know and America should know about MLK that some people are trying to hide?
Oh, wow, there's so much. I mentioned the letter from Birmingham jail, where his stance was on the Vietnam War. If many of you are following the news right now and the things that are going on with the filibuster, what his stance was on there, he touched on so many different things. But what's great about your generation now is that y'all got the internet on your phone. You know what I mean? You could Google anything. So back when we had to actually do some actual research. We had to go to the library to find some extra stuff, you know, but y'all don't have to do all that. So I grew up, my mother was a teacher. And so, you know, sometimes when your mother's a teacher, you have extra work that you have to do in the summertime. You know, you're not in summer school, you just got extra summer work to do. And that's what I had to do. And so my mother would teach me about all these different things, but she was always stressing to me that you need two educations. One education that you get in school and an education that you get at home. And at home, she would really teach me about my history and my culture and my heritage and all the different things, all the different people throughout history that the school wasn't teaching me about. So this new thing where a lot of politicians are trying to keep things out of the school, that's not new. They're just more putting a name to it. They didn't teach us when we was in school at all either. Not about our own history. They taught us about Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream. You got Rosa Parks. You might get Harriet Tubman, might get a mention. And that was really about it. You know, it really wasn't much in between. So you had to go and do some extra research on your own. And it's important because it's important that you start asking questions. Like, why are we only being taught this? You know, I remember when I was young and I asked, learned about Christopher Columbus. And I was a young cat. And I was like, well, how is somebody going to discover something when there's already people there and people living on it? I was like, help me out. So I was just challenging, and the teacher was like, yeah, there were people living here and everything like that. I was like, so doesn't that mean he kind of invaded their home? And that was like the beginning of me asking questions about what I was being taught. And you have to ask questions and you have to dig deeper. And so that would really be my advice to you all. And like I said, just Google it. Just look up stuff on your phone and you can find all these different articles and information about everything, because it's important that you know your history. Because if you don't know your history or anything about the greatness of your people, then you start to develop what's called an inferiority complex. And you don't ever want that because it manifests itself in different ways as you get older. So it's so important, I can't stress it enough, that you really go the extra mile to learn about your history.
Amen. So Natasha, young people are not the only ones who are misinformed about what's going on these days. And there's a lot of grown folks out here who need to Google also. So what are some of the issues you think that folks, and there's going to be this conversation is going to go out to a wide audience. A lot of people are going to see it. For the grown people in the audience, what are some issues that you would really encourage them to look further into that we need to get right in order to get justice?
You got all day to sit here. I think that's a really broad question, but I think it kind of goes with what Etan just said, is that we're not taught America's true history from the time that we're young. I also had to do my own research. I grew up in an all-white family, so I wasn't being taught Black history. I had to research it on my own to learn my own roots, to learn my own culture, to learn my own Blackness, and how it is that we got from those Christopher Columbus days to where we are in 2022. That's real. And within that, we go through, our society is just kind of like, we go through this thing where we sugarcoat everything and we don't learn our true history. And I think that leads to some of the ignorance that we can see in older generations. There's even conversations that I've had to have with my own family members, again, coming from an all-white family. I've had to have those hard dialogues and conversations of, like Alysha said, before I ever speak, I'm going to go to grassroots organizations. I'm going to research on my own. I'm going to make sure that I have factual things to not only tell you my truth of what it means to be a Black bisexual woman in America, but I'm also going to follow that up with factual numbers and different things that now you can't attack what I'm telling you, because feelings can be attacked, but facts, you can't turn down facts. And if you're listening to news stations, I also think media plays a big part in where we are in our country and the trajectory of what we have kind of seen over the last few years. I think media has a responsibility to tell the truth. So if you're listening to one station, but your other family or friends are listening to another station, you're going to get different facts. So one of the biggest things, whether you're a kid, whether you're a young adult, or whether you're an older adult, make sure you're doing your research and understand that not everyone comes from the same walks of life. And I think understanding that especially Black and brown people in our country have been kept out of the white status quo for years and years now. I think we have to just come to terms with the reality of what our country has been. And I think once we do that, we then are able to grow and move forward together.
Man, this is tremendous. So we are going to get to some questions from the audience, but I have a few more for the panel before this. Daniel, there's no, we're always talking about who's the GOAT, and it's a basketball term, you know, is it Jordan, is it Bron, is it Kareem, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a bigger picture out there. So here's a question for you. Who do you think is just the GOAT of Black history? In terms of all these historical Black figures out there, you know, who is your argument for who has made the most important contributions to Black America in United States history?
I mean, I would say this is still in the professional sports, but I would say Muhammad Ali for sure. You know, just seeing, like, growing up and seeing all the things and all the clips and stuff that of the things that he used to talk about and how he carried himself were always stuck out to me. There's a lot of things that stuck to me that he said, and how, like I said, how he carried himself and how he didn't really take anything from anybody. You know, it was what he said goes, and how he carried himself. That's exactly how, you know, you're going to see him. And basically, if you guys want him to do something he doesn't want to do, that's not going to benefit him and, you know, show the empowerment of Black culture or anything like that, he's not doing it. So for sure, I would say Muhammad Ali is one of my GOATs, you know, all time, because of just, you know, how much he really fought, you know, just for Black people in general and just people of his nationality in general, because of the simple fact that they tried to pry a narrative to him, and he turned that around and used it against them for sure. So that is my GOAT for sure.
Man, that's a great selection. Etan, what about you?
So for me, it would be Malcolm X. You know, I remember reading the autobiography of Malcolm X when I was in middle school, and it kind of opened up my eyes to everything. And I read about how, you know, actually when he met Muhammad Ali and how they became friends, and, you know, then started to really talk to him about his culture and his history and everything like that. So then Muhammad Ali started seeing himself as more than an athlete. He started seeing the way to use his platform. And, you know, if they never met, you know, Muhammad Ali might have just been the greatest boxer of all time, and, you know, and instead of one of the GOATs of all time of Black history. Yeah, but Malcolm X really, you know, taught as far as learning your history, doing the extra, everything that I said before about, you know, going the extra mile, and then questioning why certain things are being kept from you, why certain realities and certain truths and certain facts are being intentionally distorted, you know, in the educational process of our people. And then, you know, just as far as how to love each other and to love, you know what I mean, as a whole. And there, I mean, there's I can go down the list, but there was so much that I learned just from first reading the autobiography of Malcolm X in middle school. But that was the birth of everything for me. That's what, you know, opened my eyes. It's like the shade was down, and then it opened it up for me. Then I just started wanting to read everything and read all these different things about my history, and, you know, ask all these different questions and challenge different things, and, you know, and be able to articulate my position the way that Malcolm X used to. So that's the goal for me.
Man, absolutely. Everybody, young people, old people, if you have not read the autobiography of Malcolm X, it's an essential American document. Please look it up. Alysha, do you have a choice for the GOAT of Black history?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think my GOAT would have to be Maya Angelou. just her ability to use her words in such a powerful way to help, show what Black experience was like here in America, not only just here, but globally as well. And do it in a way that, I find near and dear to me, is just to inspire and uplift. She was the example. If something wasn't right, she didn't accept anything less than that, and held you accountable to make those changes. And, to be able to use words intentionally in education, intentionally to be able to move the needle in those conversations, for me, she's my GOAT.
Oh man, thank you so much for putting her in that conversation. And I work for the Undefeated. The name of our platform is inspired by a Maya Angelou quote, which to me sums up the Black experience. You will encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. So, Natasha, bring us home with the Black folk GOAT. What you got?
It's a lot of pressure to bring it home. No, I think AC touched on it earlier, that we don't talk enough about women and their role from the beginning of time. And so you can go back to Rosa Parks. She started the bus boycott in Montgomery. You can go to Coretta Scott King and what she did without the amplifying of her voice behind MLK. And even after his death, carrying on his legacy and what she was able to do. But I think my modern day GOAT is Stacey Abrams. And like AC said, in 2020, we were able to work directly with her. And I can safely say, and I think AC would say this as well, she saved our democracy. She single-handedly saved our democracy. And the way that she did it was educating not only athletes and mobilizing us to come together, not only as the WNBA, but now let's join our brothers in the NBA and let's bring all these athletes together. Let's educate them. Let's get them to amplify their voice and understand that we're in a time right now where America has lost their trust in government officials. So we're going to go to our athletes and we're going to go to our celebrities and we're going to use their platforms and their voices to mobilize our younger generation. And just how smart she is. I mean, just sitting down, listening to her, she's one of the most educated women that I've ever met. Even though she has had dirt thrown in her face over and over again, she still loves this country and wants to see it just thrive. And she believes in that, and she inspires you, and she gets you to believe in that as well. So I think that we don't talk enough about Stacey, but I know that she saved our democracy, especially in 2020.
Wow, man, I'm getting chills, and just, it's such a wonderful thing as we honor Martin Luther King, to include in that conversation Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Maya Angelou, Stacey Abrams, spanning history, spanning genres. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to get into some questions from the audience, and everybody who's on this audience right now. You can submit questions through the chat in the Q&A. I have some that have come in already. So I'm going to start with Jacques, who says this. And I'm going to put this question out to the group for anyone who wants to answer it. I go to a white majority school, and I want to be part of the change that helps my school become better. However, it takes a lot of strength to do that. What is a method of activism that is sustainable and effective?
That's good. That's a good question. I could jump in there. It's beginning to, for me, I started writing to be able to try to, articulate my position. And, then I got into speech and debate to be able to perform and say my positions. I think that's really a good way to kind of try to start finding your voice. Because you have a chance to do your research, you have a chance to prepare, and you have to also prepare for the naysayers and the people who are going to come to try to, first of all, kind of expose you to see if you know what you're talking about. So you got to really do your homework, and also to try to discredit you, because that's going to definitely come immediately. So you just have to be prepared. But that would be my advice.
Okay, we have a question from Marvin, and he asks, how can we hold people in our community including teammates, accountable for not participating in social change? And then Marvin says, should we hold them accountable for not participating in social change? We'd like to tackle that one. Alysha's leaning forward.
Yeah, AC.
Natasha got it. I see. I saw her
I think we
face.
can tag
I was
team
like,
this. I think we can
Yeah.
tag team it because you have to be mindful. And this is something that I've learned the hard way, is you can literally tell your story, your truth to your blue in the face, but it might take people a while to come around to it. It is a very hard space to navigate. But I'm a firm believer, while AC is very like subtle in her approach to activism, I'm with the rah-rah. So it's something that I have issues with, because I'll be like, well, why aren't you a part of this? What you doing over there that you're not a part of this for? But I've had to learn that the best way to approach it is to have those one-on-ones. If you have a teammate that you don't feel like is supporting you, sit down with them, take them to coffee, take them to lunch, tell your side of the story, have those hard dialogues, and don't be aggressive. Don't bring anger into it. You have to be able to lay down your armor, be vulnerable, and hope that they are receiving what you are laying down at the table. But you can't force anyone into doing anything that they don't want to do. All that you can do is educate yourself first, educate them, and then hope that within that education that they will eventually come around to it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part, is just understanding that everybody, I think for me, the biggest lesson I learned is everybody has biases. Communities we all grew up in, schools we all went to, like everything has formed these biases that we all have, and we all have them. But I think it's important to recognize that in order for things to change, and if these are people that it's different, it's a little bit different going about it, holding them accountable, than it is if it's somebody that you don't know. But accountability starts with yourself. If you're not emulating what you're trying to get other people to do, people aren't going to want to follow and listen. So I think it starts with you. And then just once you start doing, like when you're doing those things, it creates this safe space for others to be like, well, I actually want to approach, Etan and ask him this because I see what he's doing, and I want to ask him why he's doing it and why it's important. So then I can go back in my bubble, my world, and see where it's lacking, and I can insert what he just showed me and taught me, and I can do it in my own way to influence the people around me in that way. So I think it's like what Tosh said, like you can't force people to do something, but then also you have to start with yourself to make sure you're doing what you're trying to ask others to be doing.
Etan, you played with Michael Jordan, and he took a lot of heat for not being activist enough. And he was sort of represented a period in sports history where Black athletes said, all right, I'm gonna get this bag and I'm gonna fall back from all the advocacy. What do you, and this generation now is growing up with the activist athlete, and it really sort of, this era started when Trayvon Martin was murdered, and the Miami Heat all put hoodies on in solidarity and posted a picture. That was 2012. So that launched a whole new era of athlete activism. Etan, what are your reflections on the era when athletes stood back, and now how did we move into this era where they're out front?
Well, I think, that was really the main topic of my previous book, We Matter, Athletes and Activism. And I got a chance to interview a lot of the athletes that I grew up admiring, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell and, John Carlos, and then a lot of present day athletes. From the Wizards, I interviewed John Wall at the time, and Bradley Beal, and I interviewed Ted Leonsis. And the reason why I wanted to interview Ted Leonsis and NBA Commissioner Adam Silver was to kind of squash the myth that if you do speak out, somehow that'll hurt you professionally, because that was always said. Now, of course, there's a different era now. Now, maybe back in the day, it would have been a little bit different. But now, there's kind of a culture of activism where athletes' voices are, respected. Doesn't mean you're not going to be criticized, but you're not going to be necessarily penalized the way that you were, in the past. But I would encourage, people to understand that sometimes you're going to have to stand alone. And that's the reality. Sometimes you're not going to get everybody on your side. Why there's always strength in numbers, the way the WNBA did it, it should be like the model for all activism, for them to be able to gather everybody, even people that's not even from here. I still think that's so amazing that you did that. You had different WNBA players that are not even American. They don't even know all of the, politics that's going on, and you educated them and y'all all stood together. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. But it's not always going to work out that way. Sometimes you're going to have to stand on your own. Everybody now talks about how much they supported Dr. King and how much they stood with Muhammad Ali and everybody was down with Malcolm, and that's not how it was. It wasn't, and they've talked about it. So sometimes you have to have just the courage to be able to stand on your own convictions, and sometimes it's a lonely road. But the people who are remembered are the people who did that. They're the people who didn't allow the people who were the naysayers. And but like I said, the letter from Birmingham jail was specifically to all the leaders at that time, telling Dr. King that he needed to chill out and stop doing so much. And that's literally the point of the whole letter. So sometimes you're gonna have to stand on your own. That's the message that I really received from Dr. King.
Wow. Daniel, I want to ask you via a question from Diallo. Does being socially active and speaking out on social issues affect an athlete's ability to get endorsements? What do you think about that?
I would just say it depends maybe on the company, to be honest. You never know what, just like how Natasha had said and Alysha had said, you never know what someone else's mindset is. And sometimes when it comes to, I would say most of these companies, you never know what some of these people are thinking. And so when it comes to speaking out, you have to sometimes be careful depending on the topic. But most of the time, there are companies out there like Nike, they will, I would say step up and be behind most of the players who have, always stepped out and maybe took a knee or did something that was a way of protesting against some type of social injustice. They would always step into it and say, oh, Black Lives Matter, or we are here for the families of the people who were, murdered by the police, or so on and so forth, little things like that. Yes, there are companies that will do that, but there are also other companies out there in this world that, oh, you're doing that, that's going to make us look bad, we're not going to give you endorsements. So it's a bit 50-50, I would say, in that category, because like I said, you never know what a person's mindset is. You never know what a company's mindset is, because they have policies just like, any other company. I would say some companies say, forget our policy, we're going to be behind this person 100%. But other companies, they're like, okay, yeah, our policy is this. We're going to stay, with what we have set up for us to be successful throughout, our company and stuff. And we're just going to take that endorsement away little by little. But yeah, it is 50-50. You have to be aware of just, I would say how you say it or what you do. You can always still, I would say, protest, anything like that. But at the end of the day, it is 50-50, in my opinion, I would say, because I know for a fact if I do it, I would say the China company that I'm with, Anta, I just signed with those guys. I know for 100% they'll be behind my back 100%. They'll put out a statement, so on and so forth, say they're behind me, anything like that. But on down the road, there might be a company like Nike or Adidas or anybody that'll say like, oh, no, I'm saying, we're not going to do any, I would say, business with him just because of the simple fact that he protested about this, little by little. So it's the little things that count. You have to really just pay attention to how some of these companies move, I would say. So yeah, just being aware of just like how they move and the actions that they take when you protest is something that you have to really be aware of. So like I said, it's just really 50-50 in my opinion.
Anyone else want to talk about endorsements and activism?
Yeah, I think something to piggyback off DG, I think something that's important along those lines too is that if you're losing sponsorships for speaking your truth and for speaking what you're passionate about, that most people don't align with your morals and your values, so you shouldn't be with them anyway. And so I think that's kind of following up off of DG, that's something that I figured out, especially during the 2020 season, of when all these companies were like, oh, we're late to the Black Lives Matters movement. We need to bring on athletes. And so you have a lot of people asking you, but then when you do your research and you're looking at the company, you're looking at their history, you're like, well, wait.
Yeah,
Because, yeah, you're like, wait, what happened? Because years ago you were speaking differently than what you're speaking about now. And I think in a lot of these instances, the reality is there's a lot of white faces at the top of these companies. And so it's not necessarily diverse. So you have to kind of navigate through who is actually supporting you. Like when I sat out, Converse paid my whole entire salary for 2020. They didn't have to do that, but they believed in me. They believed what I stood on. And you don't see that. That's very rare that you see that. But we also have a Black CEO. So he understood our fight in this matter. But you can go around to different companies that promise things to the communities in 2020, and I'm following up with them in 2022. And I'm like, so where'd that money go? Did it go to our communities? Did it go to resources and opportunities for our lower economic kids or our lower economic communities? Or did we just, go with the clout at the moment and you had to make a statement to seem like you supported the movement? So it's a hard thing to navigate. But like I said, if people are dropping you or they don't want to sign you because of your voice about what you're passionate about, then they were never supposed to be in your journey or in, your purpose.
Thank you. Well, we have two more questions, and one of them is directed at the media, so I'm going to deal with that one real quick. Christopher asks, how do reporters deal with current issues in terms of diversity, racism, and equity? Do all sports, men and women, receive the same amount of publicity? The answer is easy. Number one, not well, and number two, no. We don't cover everybody equally. We need to do better. I'm so pleased to be here with 2 women athletes today. That we need to do more of that. And so my profession in terms of the media has a long way to go until we are more part of the solution to the things that are going on. And I try to just get outside of myself. I'm a man. I have a certain set of biases, as Alysha said. And so let me get outside of those and make sure that I'm looking everywhere to accurately cover the community. So Christopher, thank you for that question. So the last question that I would like to put to the panel is this. How can high school athletes, this is a question from James, how can high school athletes take part in social activism and feel a bit of independence when they are under adult supervision? Who'd like to jump on that one?
I can add a little bit. There's a great book that just came out called The Kaepernick Effect. You look it up. It's by Dave Zirin, and it's called The Kaepernick Effect. And what he did was he interviewed young athletes, high school and middle school, all across the country. And they were all talking about the things that they specifically did in their high schools and middle schools, and in their cities and in their towns, of what was going on and why they took those stances. So I think that would be a great thing for you to look up on your own time and be able to see directly from the voices of your peers. A lot of times, middle school and high school teenagers, you feel like you're powerless, like you said, under adult supervision. So what can you do? But there's a lot that you can do. But I'm not going to spoil it for you because I want you to look it up yourself, and I want you to be able to see all of the different examples. So again, it's called The Kaepernick Effect, and it's by Dave Zirin.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback, there's a lot more organizations of adults who are bringing kids on board to be active in their communities about issues that they care about. You see it, right now a lot in the education system. You have a group of middle schoolers who are researching and learning about the inequalities in the education system and are going to these town hall meetings and speaking and using their voice and standing up and presenting the research that they have learned about, and are able to continue on with that as they move on to high school and those types of things. So you have adults who are helping organize, but giving you that independence of your voice and giving you that independence to talk about your experiences because they didn't have that. So I think, to kind of piggyback off Etan, just research what's these organizations around your area. You have Google, look up, and, if you care about inequalities in the education system in New Jersey, Google that, and there'll be a plethora of organizations that are doing that for kids. And I think that's a great way to start.
And two, I'm with the rah-rah, I told you all that. But stand on your own convictions too. Understand the power that you have. You don't need to be an athlete. You don't need to be a celebrity. I wish I understood the power of my voice when I was in high school. So get into good trouble, right? That's the good trouble. You don't need adult supervision. You can mobilize together. There's power in numbers. Etan already touched on, different high schools coming together and walking out. You can do it amongst yourselves, and you're always going to be met with critics. Whatever thing that you decide you're passionate about and you stand on, there's always going to be people that support you. There's always going to be people that will critique you. But as long as you are genuine and about your passions and you're standing on your own convictions, that's all that matters. So yes, I'm with the rah-rah.
Greater than the haters.
Absolutely. And Dr. King would not have been able to accomplish what he accomplished without thousands and thousands of young people, school-age children, supporting him, marching with him, taking action on their own. It was 4 college students who started the sit-in movement at a Woolworth's lunch counter that really was one of the main drivers of desegregation and of passing laws to outlaw these kind of things. So demand your teachers teach you about what young people your age did. Demand that. Demand to learn. Demand information. Don't stop when they won't give it to you. Go get it yourself and use that. And if you follow your heart. Etan, Alysha, Natasha, Daniel, I really want to thank y'all for joining us. And to close it out, I'm going to send it back to Coach Thompson.
I want to echo what Jesse just said. I really want to thank Jesse and our panelists. This was educational, inspirational to an old head like me, to hear some of your thoughts, some of your opinions, your convictions, and your understanding of your platform. And speaking of that, as I said earlier, as the panelists have articulated throughout the past hour, everyone listening, all the teams that are listening, everyone has a voice. Everyone can affect their community. And so I look forward over the weekend to reading the action plans that we are challenging you to come up with, how you can make a difference. We're going to shoot out an email blast when this is over that gives the address. Here, the slide is up on the screen if you can write it down now, but you also get an email address. And also, I hadn't planned on this, but after hearing it several times, I also have a challenge to the coaches that are out there. Not a challenge, but a homework assignment. Read to your teams a letter from a Birmingham jail, or have your teams read that. I think Etan is right that that's something that is not discussed enough. And so I hadn't planned on giving you all a homework assignment, but I'm giving you one. So thank you for being all the teams that are listening. Hopefully someone was touched. Hopefully someone learned a little bit. Hopefully someone realizes that our panelists are just like you. And you will get involved. And so as
JP3, can I say one more thing?
Yes, ma'am.
And to all the kids, utilize us. We're not untouchable figures. I think that's something that all of us also want to say. I think DG said it best when he was talking about what he's done in the community. To be impactful means to be present. When we take these jerseys off at the end of the day, we are all Black people in America. So we face the same issues, the same injustices, the same inequalities that you face every day. So don't look at us as these untouchable figures. Reach out to us, write us DMs, write monumental, call on your local teams, because again, there's power in numbers, and it's a beautiful thing when it gets together.
And I think we should end on that note. Everyone, good luck with the rest of your season. Stay safe. Stay masked, and you'll be hearing from us. Thank you for being a part of this. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.